Hi everyone, when you're waist training, a natural part of the process is sizing down. So your first corset might be 4 to 6 inches smaller than your natural waist, but what happens when you sort of outshrink your first corset and you want to go down even further? How do you know when it's time to get a new smaller corset? I'm here to give you some tips and tricks in this video on when you know it's time to size down and what you can do with your old, bigger corsets. Please note though that this is in the context of somebody who is actually waist training. So if you're just an occasional corset wearer and you have absolutely no desire to size down, just disregard this video because you don't have to size down if you don't want to. Firstly, when do you know that a corset is too large for you? Basically, when you put on a corset for the first time and you lace it very loosely, as in the case of seasoning your corset or breaking it in, if the corset closes all the way in the back from the top to the bottom, it's probably too small for you. A new corset often has a gap of about 2 to 4 inches, if it's designed to eventually close in the back, that is. And it might have a slightly larger gap of 4 to 6 inches if the corset is designed to have a small gap in the back, which some corseters do draft for. So let's say you've been wearing a corset for several months and today is the day that you are able to close it fully in the back. Congratulations, but do you go out and buy your next corset that very day? Conservatively speaking, I would say not yet. I would probably say that it's time to size down when you can easily and consistently close the corset every single time, regardless of what time of the month it is, regardless of the natural small fluctuations in your weight or your water retention. You've been wearing it closed for a month or more. Maybe you can stick a hand down the front, or you can pull your abdomen away from the internal wall of the corset when you're sucking in. If you can basically do the hula in it, presuming that your corset hasn't stretched a couple of inches, that is when you really know it's time to size down. Now, notice that I did mention that your corset is not supposed to stretch significantly. So when you are closing your corset all the way, do measure the internal waist of the corset and make sure that it hasn't stretched 2 or 3 inches, because when you size down from there, it might actually feel too tight and you might actually need to stay with the same size corset, maybe just a higher quality one that doesn't stretch so much. But presuming that your corset didn't stretch that significantly, it is time to size down. In terms of how much to size down for your next corset and signs of sizing down too quickly, I will address that in a future video. So what can you do with your old, larger corset? Can you actually alter your corset to be smaller? Theoretically, yes, but if you don't sew, good luck finding a corset maker that is willing to alter another person's work. Many corset makers would rather actually make a new corset from scratch rather than modify an old one. This is because if you want a perfectly altered corset that has absolutely no evidence of alteration, you basically have to take your seam ripper and remove the binding, remove the bones, take apart the seams, and hope the fabric actually survives the trauma because all those seam lines are now perforated. You might have to cut the waist tape to make it shorter, which weakens the corset. And then you have to reshape every panel because it's not a good idea to just do one seam if you want to ensure that the hips are not angled forward or backward in the end product. And then you basically have to put the entire corset back together again. So I have considered making a tutorial on how to do this, but quite honestly, like deep down in my heart, I don't consider it worth it. There are a couple of other people on YouTube who showed how they had altered their corsets to be smaller. So CorsetRookie had sewed darts and pleats in his Axfords corset. But when you're doing this, it's especially in a thicker corset, keep in mind that when you do sew those pleats or those darts and you're folding the fabric over on top of itself, when you're lacing down, you might actually feel those ridges or those grooves, and it might cause pressure points in your corset when you're wearing it. So do be aware of that caveat. Another YouTuber, Snowblack Corsets, had taken a larger, what Katie did, overbust corset and made it smaller and curvier. Her video, I think, is called Pimp My Katie Project. So both links I will put up here, or I will put it down in the description for those watching this on mobile. So what can you do with your old, larger corsets? Well, firstly, if you've ever tried sleeping in your corset, you might find that you are one of those people who needs to loosen the laces a little when you sleep. So if you buy or you make a smaller corset, you can designate that larger old one as a sleeping corset. Sleeping in a corset can actually be a little bit traumatic to the corset, but since your old, bigger corset is no longer your primary corset at this point, you don't need to worry as much about getting lint or dander on it, or if the satin fabric gets sort of wearing or abrasion if you're rolling around and putting weird pressure on it during the night. The second thing you can do with your old corset is, if it's still relatively good quality or good condition, you can sell it secondhand or trade it for a different corset. So there is a ton of old corsets being sold on eBay, or if your corset is more than 20 years old, it qualifies as a vintage item on Etsy and it can be sold there even if it's not handmade by you. There are also corset sale groups on Facebook and Tumblr, and my own consignment shop on my website as well, and you can use the funds from your old corset to basically pay for your new corset. Presuming that your old corset is still decent quality, still very wearable, then depending on who actually made your corset and how rare it is, a secondhand corset might sell for anywhere between 50% up to maybe 75% of the original price that you paid for. Keep in mind though that if your corset is an off-the-rack piece that you initially bought for under $100, do not expect full price for it when you're selling it secondhand. You're already marketing to a demographic whose wallets are already tight. You know, they're looking for a very cheap corset. And keep in mind that even though you took very good care of your corset, that buyer doesn't know what the corset has gone through. And so even if you had only worn a corset 1 or 2 times, there is the risk that, you know, you're not going to get full price for that corset. There's always a risk when buying a secondhand corset, because that person who receives the corset from you, they're no longer going to have the benefit of any sort of warranty or exchange factor. And the third thing you can do, if your corsets are really beat up and not appropriate for resale, and you also don't hold very much sentimental value in them, then basically you can cannibalize those old corsets and harvest them for the hardware. So busk bones, perhaps large pieces of lace applique or crystals or other embellishment if you have them on the corset and if they're still good quality. As long as the hardware inside of it isn't rusted or kinked, then you can recycle them as many times as you want for the new corsets. Another thing you can do is basically cut out the entire grommet panel of your old corset. Make sure that you leave a seam allowance there, and anytime you make a mock-up or a toile, you can quickly and easily just sort of slap that grommet panel onto your mock-up, just sew along that seam allowance, and it will save you a bundle of time and grommets. You basically don't have to re-grommet every mock-up you make in the future. You just need to reuse that grommet panel over and over again. So there you go, 3 things you can do with your old larger corsets. You can sleep in them, you can sell them online, or you can harvest them for materials. Maybe the 4th one, if you're really ambitious and you want to attempt an alteration to make the corset smaller. So I hope that helped you guys. In my next video, I am going to give some tips and tricks on what to consider when shopping for your next smaller corset as you're sizing down. So if you have any questions or comments, or if you have your own ideas on what to do with your old corsets, or other tips on how you know when it's time for you to size down, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Make sure you click that like button and help support the channel, and I will see you on Friday for the next review. Bye!